J.P. Morgan wasn't just a banker. He was the iron spine behind America's financial survival when lesser men folded. When panic ripped through Wall Street and banks fell like dominoes, Morgan didn't flinch. He sat in a dark room, cigar smoke swirling, and decided which companies would live and which would vanish into history. Presidents called him when their own governments failed to calm the storm. He didn't rule with armies. He ruled with trust, fear, and a balance sheet heavier than entire nations. He wasn't born into untouchable wealth. He built it on cold information and colder decisions. He bribed no crowds, gave no grand speeches. Instead, he knew more than anyone in the room, and he never wasted that edge. Where others begged markets to calm down, Morgan bent them to his will. Crisis was never disaster for him. It was a yard sale for the powerful to collect broken businesses at a discount and weld them into an empire. This mindset didn't make him popular. It made him indispensable. Rival bankers envied him. Politicians cursed him. But when disaster struck, they came crawling back, hats in hand. Because Morgan understood the brutal truth of money, trust is currency. And when the market's trust breaks, the man who still has it becomes king. J.P. Morgan didn't fight chaos. He made himself the fortress everyone ran to when chaos burned their homes down. In this video, you won't hear fairy tales about overnight riches. You'll see how Morgan thought when bullets flew. Information first, reputation unshakable, fear hidden behind a poker face, contract sharper than knives. He didn't need to be loud. He needed to be the last man standing when everyone else ran for cover. He didn't pray for calm seas. He built ships that survived storms. If you want to think like Morgan, you must kill your fear of panic. Crisis will always return. Recessions, bank runs, market tremors, all echoes of the same old greed and foolish debt. But where the crowd sees doom, Morgan saw leverage. After this, you will too, if you dare to learn how he made crisis his most profitable ally. So light your mental cigar, sit down, and absorb how a real master of money bends storms to build dynasties. Now, Lesson 1. Master information before you master money. J.P. Morgan didn't bet blindly. He didn't wake up and gamble fortunes on rumors. He built a private web of intelligence decades before governments dreamed of spies. Bank clerks, shipping captains, rail managers, they all fed him whispers about who was honest, who was drowning in secret debt, who was ripe for takeover. Information was his weapon. Cash was just the bullet fired after the target was locked. He read balance sheets like a surgeon reads x-rays, seeing the tumors that CEOs hid behind polished press releases. Rivals feared him because they never knew what he knew. He would smile at them across mahogany tables, already knowing their books were cooked, their credit rotten. Deals that looked generous on the surface buried traps in the fine print, traps set by Morgan's deeper knowledge. In his world, ignorance wasn't bliss. It was bankruptcy, with a smile. This is why, when panic erupted, Morgan wasn't shocked. He knew which banks had been reckless. He knew which companies were zombies, propped up by rumors. So when he walked into that smoky back room to save the market, he wasn't guessing. He was selecting which players he'd rescue and which assets he'd absorb for pennies. To Morgan, knowledge wasn't power. It was control over everyone who lacked it. Most people today spend hours scrolling headlines and calling it research. Morgan would sneer at that. Real research means studying ledgers, analyzing debt flows, understanding industry secrets no headline reveals. He paid for facts, not opinions. He didn't follow the crowd's advice. The crowd followed his. Because he never walked blind into a crisis. He walked in knowing who would drown first. Your takeaway? Before you throw a single dollar at an investment, know more than the next man. Dig deeper, question harder, verify everything. Never trust easy numbers. Trust your own digging. If you can't read a company like Morgan did, then you're not investing, you're hoping. And hope is the cheapest asset on the market. Master information first. Master money second. That's how Morgan stayed the calmest man in the room when everyone else begged him to save their fortune. Lesson 2. Crisis is not disaster. It's a buying opportunity. J.P. Morgan didn't fear financial chaos. He salivated at it. While weak bankers locked vaults and prayed the storm would pass, Morgan unlocked deals behind closed doors. He understood the iron rule of capitalism. Panic makes kings if you have cash and a cold heart. When the public dumped stocks in terror, Morgan gathered them for pennies, reshaping entire industries with a single handshake and a loan no one else could provide. History books love to paint him as a savior of the American economy. He was, but he never played charity. He rescued banks because it made him owner of their souls. He calmed Wall Street because calming it meant consolidating power where it mattered, in his vault. Every crisis he fixed made him stronger, richer, and more untouchable. He knew desperation cheapens assets faster than any auctioneer ever could. To Morgan, crisis was a fire sale for the brave and a graveyard for the naive. He knew exactly when to appear generous, and exactly what collateral to demand in return. When railroads trembled on the edge of bankruptcy, he stepped in, offered loans, installed his men on their boards, and turned chaos into a pipeline for profits that would feed him for decades. Crisis wasn't a threat. It was a clearance rack stocked by other people's fear. Most people beg for calm markets, steady prices, predictable growth. Morgan laughed at predictability. He knew human greed guarantees bubbles. Bubbles guarantee collapse. Collapse guarantees that the prepared man writes the next chapter of the market's story, with his pen and everyone else's assets as ink. He didn't just profit from panic. He engineered stability once he owned the pieces worth saving. So remember this, when everyone is praying for rescue, you can be the rescuer for a price. Keep cash ready when times are good. Study who's weak when the music plays, so you know what to grab when it stops. Crisis is the market's brutal confession. It tells you who was lying about strength. Morgan didn't panic with the crowd. He bought their fear and sold them back their confidence with interest. Lesson 3. Build a reputation that intimidates. J.P. Morgan understood something every billionaire eventually learns. Money talks, but reputation roars. He knew his word could calm more markets than any pile of gold could. When he said, "I will fix this," bankers slept again. When he walked into a negotiation, men twice his size and half his brains fell silent. He didn't buy that power overnight. He built it trade by trade, promise by promise, and a lifetime of never flinching when it was easier to lie. In his world, trust wasn't soft kindness. It was a steel sword. If Morgan said he would fund a bailout, he funded it. If he said a crooked partner would pay, that man paid or vanished from finance forever. Rivals might hate him, but they trusted him more than their friends. That trust let him move mountains with a single signature. While others posted guarantees, Morgan's handshake closed billion-dollar deals before lawyers drafted page 1. Reputation for Morgan was an invisible fortress. It protected him from rumors because his track record drowned gossip. It opened doors kings couldn't force open. It made regulators hesitate before picking a fight they couldn't win. He didn't spend energy defending himself. He let decades of unbroken credibility defend him for free. Where lesser men bribed newspapers to look strong, Morgan made headlines bow to reality. He was the man markets obeyed. Most people today think reputation means social media clout. Morgan would spit out his cigar laughing. He'd say, "Your followers don't matter when your name can't back your promises. One broken word today costs you 10 deals tomorrow." He lived so that even his enemies admitted, if Morgan says it, it's done. That kind of respect is priceless, and it's earned one ruthless decision at a time. Your lesson is brutal but timeless. Guard your name more fiercely than your bank account. One can be refilled, the other, once tarnished, is lost forever. Deliver more than you promise. Keep secrets. Pay debts faster than expected. When crisis strikes, people don't run to the richest man, they run to the most trusted. Morgan proved it. Your name should do the same. Lesson 4. Show no emotion, show control. J.P. Morgan ruled rooms, not by shouting, but by being the only man whose pulse never changed. When rumors spread, rivals sweated bullets. Morgan didn't blink. Panic meetings, market crashes, boardrooms filled with desperate men begging for a bailout. He sat there like stone, cigar in hand, eyes locked on numbers, not on noise. His calm was more contagious than fear. He knew. The crowd trusts the man who looks unshakable when everyone else trembles. He didn't let emotion leak because he knew once people sense your fear, they smell blood. And in finance, blood means predators come. So Morgan trained himself ruthlessly. No panic, no rage, no bragging when he won, no sulking when he lost. He was the mountain others leaned on in the storm. That psychological edge made him unstoppable. When Morgan was calm, markets calmed. That was his real currency. Behind closed doors, he felt pressure like any human. He made mistakes, faced betrayal, absorbed rumors. But in public, he was granite. This posture alone turned fragile alliances into loyal partnerships. When his own partners wavered, he cut them without mercy. To Morgan, a weak link in a crisis was treason. He demanded nerves of steel because he paid in the same currency. He didn't flinch, so no one dared flinch around him. Today's investors crumble at a bad tweet, an ugly headline, or a stock dip on Monday morning. Morgan would scoff. He'd say, "Control your face or lose your fortune." He didn't gamble on markets staying calm. He made himself calm so he could make clear moves while others drowned in panic. This alone bought him bargains and loyalty that money alone could never buy. Want to channel Morgan when your own storm hits? Kill the reflex to panic first. Breathe. Look at the facts, not the gossip. Never show fear to people who profit from your doubt. If your hands shake, keep them in your pockets. If your voice cracks, stay silent until it doesn't. In money and in power, the man who can look calm when the world burns owns that world when the ashes settle. Morgan proved it. With every storm he turned into empire. Lesson 5. Use power silently. J.P. Morgan never needed to pound podiums or deliver fiery speeches to prove his dominance. His real power lived behind closed doors, whispered in private deals, written in contracts others barely understood until they were bound by them. While politicians roared in public, Morgan moved pieces in the dark, financing campaigns, rewriting laws through discreet conversations, deciding who got a lifeline and who sank without fanfare. He proved that true authority doesn't scream, it nods, and the world rearranges itself. He believed power advertised too loudly is power diluted. The moment people see your entire hand, they start plotting how to cut it off. Morgan revealed only what he needed to control the narrative, never enough for rivals to predict his next strike. Rumors followed him everywhere, but clarity never did. By design, he thrived on mystery because mystery buys time, and time buys leverage. Every deal he crafted had layers. Public terms for the newspapers, private conditions for those smart enough to read between the lines. He built coalitions by funding enemies when it suited him, then snapping the leash when they forgot who held it. His silence made partners uneasy, and that unease kept them loyal. Loud men burn bridges fast. Silent men build corridors no one sees until it's too late to block the path. Today's power chasers broadcast every move, bragging online, leaking plans, feeding egos. Morgan would light a cigar, chuckle, and gut their schemes while they performed for the crowd. He knew every word spent bragging is a word not spent negotiating. He spent his words where they made money, not noise. His silence wasn't weakness. It was the echo that filled rooms after his quiet yes or brutal no. Want to think like Morgan? Make power feel like a rumor, not a headline. Let people guess how much you control. Speak less than you know. Agree less than you're offered. Move pieces while others debate. Reward loyalty in the shadows and punish betrayal in silence. The loudest king gets overthrown first. The quiet king writes history and signs the checks for the rebellion. Morgan did both, without ever raising his voice. Lesson 6. Protect your interests like a general. J.P. Morgan didn't trust luck. He trusted ironclad contracts, sharp lawyers, and the kind of leverage that made betrayal more painful than loyalty. Every deal he made was fortified like a fortress under siege. He didn't just shake hands and pray people kept promises. He wrote terms that bled traitors dry if they dared cross him. In Morgan's empire, even whispers of dishonesty carried a price tag. That's why partners obeyed and rivals tiptoed. He knew business is a battlefield. Treat it like a tea party and you lose your crown before dessert. Morgan built alliances like military pacts, clear, enforceable, backed by consequences. If you wanted his money, you paid his price, signed his papers, and slept knowing your assets could be seized if you got cute with your word. He didn't do friendship deals. He did bulletproof deals disguised as polite agreements. Every major move, rescuing a bank, restructuring a railroad, underwriting governments, was locked inside legal armor. If the other side failed, Morgan owned the pieces. If they thrived, he collected dividends like a king taxing loyal subjects. His foresight killed surprises. He didn't rely on optimism. He relied on written threats no court could ignore. Fortune favors the prepared, but she worships the prepared with an army of lawyers. Modern hustlers sign contracts they barely read, blinded by excitement and trust. Morgan would scoff. He'd say, "You're not in business if you can't protect your downside." Risk is real, but stupidity is optional. He protected every dollar as if an enemy lurked in every boardroom, because usually one did. His paranoia wasn't fear, it was insurance that his empire didn't depend on the mood swings of weaker men. Want to channel Morgan? Build deals that survive betrayal? Write terms that punish laziness and reward loyalty? Know where your money sits and who can touch it. Keep your paperwork tighter than your handshake. Smile at the table, but always sit with your generals, lawyers, accountants, enforcers, ready to defend your castle when someone tests your gates. Morgan didn't trust the market's mercy. He trusted his fortifications. Be that fortress. Tucker. Lesson 7. Leave a legacy that controls the game after you're gone. J.P. Morgan didn't just build wealth. He built permanence. While others worked tirelessly to expand their businesses in the short term, Morgan built systems, institutions, and legacies that would dominate even after he was gone. He didn't just want to be rich. He wanted to be untouchable. And he knew the only way to do that was to leave a mark so deep that the game would still be played on his terms, long after his death. He didn't just hand down his fortune to his family. He built an empire that would forever need his family's presence, an influence that stretched far beyond the money in their accounts. His wealth was a tool, but his influence? That was eternal. By creating institutions, including J.P. Morgan & Co., he ensured that his name would not only be remembered but actively shape global finance for generations. When you build something that survives you, you don't just pass down wealth, you pass down power. Morgan also knew that controlling the narrative was key. He understood that true legacy isn't just about buildings or bank accounts. It's about controlling the story that gets told about you. Morgan made sure his legacy wasn't just history. It was the future. People who tell your story set the terms of your immortality. By ensuring the right people told the story of how he shaped Wall Street, Morgan ensured his reputation would shape the rules of finance long after he had left the room. Most people think wealth dies when they do, but not Morgan. He turned his financial empire into a dynasty. His name, his influence, and the culture of the financial world were his inheritance to the future. The banks that survived him were a testament to his understanding that real wealth is measured by the power to shape what comes next. Morgan didn't simply create wealth for his time. He shaped the very rules of wealth for generations to come. If you want to leave a legacy like Morgan, stop thinking about quick profits and fleeting trends. Build foundations that protect your wealth and influence, not just for your life, but for the life of your children and their children. Design systems that outlive your name, structures that keep your power intact long after you've stepped away. Create a legacy that continues to influence the game when you're no longer there to play it yourself. And when panic strikes, the weak panic, but the smart prepare. J.P. Morgan understood this law better than anyone. He knew that every crisis hides an invisible goldmine, not for the emotional, but for the strategic. He didn't become the titan of Wall Street by fearing chaos. He thrived because he anticipated it, absorbed it, and turned fear into leverage. Today, you have heard the blueprint. Build your alliances when the market is calm. Keep liquid cash ready when others are greedy. Study the cycles until you see the cracks forming before they show up on the front page. Be the mind behind the rescue, not the victim needing to be saved. Most people will hear this and forget tomorrow, but the rare ones, maybe you, will write it down, study it, live it. They will learn to sit still when the storm screams. They will learn to strike when the noise is deafening. And when the next crisis comes, they won't beg for help. They will be the ones others crawl to. Strategy is power. Crisis is opportunity. Play like Morgan, think centuries ahead, and the world will work for you, not against you. Remember, fortune whispers only to those who dare to listen in silence.